Okay, so let us start again. So our topic for today is professional communication and informed consent. So objectives at the end of the presentation, students would be able to define communication and professional communication, discuss the communication process, list the skills of a successful communicator, list and discuss the 10 things to consider in effective communication in healthcare, verbalize the different factors affecting communication, and recall the different or the definition of informed consent, list its levels, and discuss the conditions for a valid informed consent. So communication as defined by Merriam and Webster Dictionary is a process by which information is transferred between two persons, okay? Through which using a particular medium that is like a common system of symbols like the alphabet, okay? Signs or behavior. So it is also a technique for expressing ideas effectively. Okay. When we uh, like to express our ideas, be it in school or at home, okay, we initiate communication. While communication focuses mostly on its verbal form, we should not forget that there are non-verbal communication form as well. And we should always pay attention with this non-verbal communication, especially when we are dealing with our patients. Okay? So, hindi lang, when we say non-verbal, hindi lang yung non-verbal uh, communication that the patient exhibit ang ating dapat tingnan kung hindi pati yung ating mga non-verbal communication actions. Baka mamaya our uh, actions, okay, are contradicting what we are saying. Okay, so that will bring uh, anxiety to the patient. And most of the time, patients are very attentive and very observant when it comes to the actions of the healthcare worker. Okay? And lastly, communication is very important in the collaboration between healthcare professionals. Okay. In the delivery of treatment, okay, towards the patient. Okay. And also, it is uh, important with the collaboration between the healthcare professionals and their patients and family. Okay? So patients and family are great help when we solicit their cooperation. Okay? Kapag nakuha natin ang cooperation ng pasyente at ng family ng patient, so we will have uh, a more effective and efficient conduct of the procedure. So while we defined earlier the communication as a general, okay, as in general, so now we define professional communication. So Winter defines it as a communication that encompasses written, oral, visual, and digital communication within a workplace setting or context. So meaning this type of communication is particularly observable and should be used in the workplace, okay, setting. Okay. So that means not only the process of communication, okay, uh, it should also be the attitude as a professional, okay, on how we conduct communication. Okay, so it is a process of relaying information between the healthcare professional and their colleagues, the healthcare professional between their patients, and the healthcare professionals between their or the patient's family. Okay, so this is very important uh, that we should know how to conduct ourselves professionally, especially in communication. Okay. That's why we have certain norms or rules in the hospital setting. Okay, that is applicable only in our workplace. For example, we don't call or we are not encouraged to call our patient as kuya, ate, tatay, nanay, lolo, lola. Okay, we are encouraged or we are taught to call our patients by their name, Mr. So and so, okay, or we use ma'am, sir, okay. Why? Because it is more professional. Okay. At the same time, it allows us to be objective, and it also gives uh, the patient and their family the impression that the healthcare worker is indeed objectively uh, communicating and professionally communicating. Okay, so when you start to encounter patients, so yan, avoid calling them as ate, kuya, nanay, tatay, lolo, lola. Okay? So either sir, ma'am, or simply call their name as Mr. Mr. So, Mr. Yo, etc. Okay? Then the communication process. So in the illustration that you can see, it is the process on which how communication occurs. Okay. So communication, of course, is a two-way street. Okay? It is a two-way street between two people, the sender and the recipient. Okay? The sender will send a message, okay, through a particular channel or medium, okay, to the recipient. Okay. And the process goes like this. So the message is encoded. Okay. In what we mean by encoded is it is constructed. Okay. By the sender, constructed and uh, okay by words, also by what type of voice should the sender use. Okay. then to a particular medium, which is the channel. Okay, so let's say this the channel includes the non-verbal communication uh, actions. Okay, also the what type of language that the sender will use. Okay, and then the message will be decoded by the recipient. The message will uh, or the recipient will try to understand the message. After which, the sender may solicit a feedback from the recipient, okay, using the recipient will send the feedback using the same method or process as the sender sends the message. Okay, so as you can see, there is a barrier or barriers. There are barriers uh, illustrated in around the channel. Okay, it is because uh, the barriers are concerned on which medium that the sender or the recipient will be using to convey the message or the feedback. So some examples of this is the diction, the terms that we use when we communicate. Okay, but there are different types of terms. We have the common common terms. Okay, the operational terms by which only people from the same field understand. Okay, and also an example of this is when we are talking with people from other regions. Okay, they have different accents, and sometimes their accents, if they are too strong, became or becomes a barrier in the communication process. Diba? And of course, the language itself. If the recipient doesn't understand the language that the sender used, so that is already a barrier. Okay? So there are skills that are needed by a communicator to become successful. First is uh, listening skills. Okay. In order for a healthcare provider to communicate effectively, okay, kinakailangan ay marunong tayong makinig. Okay? We have a very good skill in listening. Okay? And kasabay ng listening skills, yung observational skills natin. Okay? Um, when we are talking with our patients, okay, we should not only um, say words or verbalize them, but also we should listen and observe our patients. Okay? So, kahit tayo yung nagsasalita, okay, there are non-verbal uh, actions that the patient may exhibit. Okay, and we as healthcare providers must recognize these non-verbal actions in order for us to uh, communicate well. Kasi the purpose of our uh, communication is to, number one, uh, solicit the cooperation of the patient. Okay? Number two, to be able to assess our patient. Di ba? Kaya nga may mga radtech na sinasabi hindi na nila kailangan gumamit ng caliper kasi sa tingin pa lang alam na nila yung sukat ng chest or ng particular body part, and therefore alam na nila yung gagamitin nilang technical factors. Okay? So another skill is of course the speaking skills. Okay. In speaking, okay, we should be confident, okay, and we should be confident but not arrogant when speaking with our patients. Okay. Remember that our patients are sick people, or most of them, most of the time, are experiencing pain. Okay, so we should be mindful of the words that we speak. And last skill is writing. Okay, so communication does not only involve listening, observing, and speaking, but also writing. Okay, there are people who are good in speaking because they are also good in writing. Okay, and writing can be uh, a tool or exercise for us to develop our vocabulary. Same goes with reading. Okay, but for the sake of the skills needed to become a successful communicator in the healthcare healthcare setting. So these four are what we need. So we should develop these four skills in order for us to communicate better and therefore deliver the best quality of service that we can give to our patients. So next is the 10 things to consider in effective communication. Okay, number one, emotional intelligence. Okay. We define emotional intelligence as the ability to understand, manage emotions, allowing us to communicate effectively, avoid stress, overcome challenges, and empathize with others. Okay, so ito yung tinatawag na EQ. Okay, so it is not only important for us to have a sufficient level of IQ, but also we should have a sufficient level of EQ as well. By having a sufficient amount or a sufficient level of EQ, we know or we will know what to say, how to say it, okay, and when to say it. Kaya nga dito, sinasabi na it is the ability to understand and manage our emotions. Okay. When our emotions are high or when our emotion is high, we should avoid speaking. Okay? Be it in anger, be it in uh, happiness, Okay? So we should avoid speaking. Diba? Kaya nga may kasabihan na uh, or may mga instances na nangyayari that certain words are said due to the spur of the moment. Okay? Because we was not able to manage our emotion. Okay? Then number two, cohesion and clarity. Good communication is much more than saying the right thing. It is about communicating the messages clearly and concisely. Okay? So, clearly, malinaw dapat ang ating message na pinaabot sa pasyente. And concise, meaning sakto lang yung haba ng ating sasabihin ng message. Okay? So magpapatanggal ka lang ng bra, baka mamaya ang dami mo nang sinabi. Baka mamaya na-explain mo pa yung kasi po may metal artifact, tapos yung, ganito po yung itsura ng metal artifact, then ito po ay makaka-apekto sa ganito, sa ganyan. Okay? So, we should be able to communicate clearly and concisely. Okay? Yung mga information na hindi naman kailangan ng pasyente, so we should avoid uh, saying those things. Rather, we should state uh, the message clearly or the instructions clearly and concisely. Pwede namang magbigay ka lang ng maikling reason kung bakit kailangang magtanggal ng bra ng pasyente for chest x-ray. Okay? Then number three is friendliness. A friendly tone will send a message that you are open to communication. Okay? So establishing rapport, okay? Part of it is yan, having a friendly tone. Kaya when we establish rapport, di ba, we always begin with uh, good morning po, ma'am, sir. Ako po si ganito, your radiologic technologies na perform ng procedure, blah, blah, blah. So, kumusta po kayo today? Ano po nararamdaman nila? So, having a friendly tone will send message that you are open to communication. Then number four, confidence. So demonstrating confidence builds client trust that you will follow through with any proposed action. So of course, when yun nga sabi ko sa inyo kanina that patients are very observant and very attentive. So when they feel and observe that a healthcare provider is not confident with what they are doing, they usually question the person or the healthcare worker. Okay? And if things doesn't go right, so the patient request for other uh, healthcare workers to perform the procedure. So that's why even in speaking, even in explaining, we should be confident enough with what we are saying, with what we are communicating with our client. Okay? But not to the point that even uh, halimbawa nagtanong ang pasyente, so kahit na hindi natin alam yung sagot, ipilit nating binibigyan ng sagot. So it is not correct. Baka mamaya, hindi na nga natin alam yung sagot at paniwalaan tayo ng pasyente dahil we are very confident in what we are saying, eh yun naman pala mali. Diba? So we must also put into context being confident. Okay? So again, confident but not arrogant. Okay, number five is empathy. So providing empathy indicates respect for the other person's views and messages. Okay. So sometimes when we are doing some procedures with our patients, so there are patients that are very vocal. Okay? They continue uh, to speak, to share their stories, okay, even as you work. Okay? So for those type of people, okay, we should be able to uh, identify ourselves with them, to empathize with them. Okay? Maybe some of these people are lacking attentions at home or at work. Okay? And it is a good thing that you are listening to what they are saying. You are accommodating to their stories. Okay? And this will greatly help the patient to lessen their anxieties. Okay? So being empathetic is uh, a vital or a fundamental characteristic that a healthcare provider or a healthcare professional should have. The number six, respect. So be respectful of others' thoughts and opinions. Okay. So hindi naman lahat ng bagay or hindi naman palagi na uh, when a healthcare provider is talking with uh, a patient, so hindi naman lahat ng bagay ay hindi lahat ng pagkakataon ay matiwasay ang pag-uusap. Okay? So sometimes there can be uh, a misunderstanding or uh, a challenging situation on which the client or the patient uh, have their own idea of the particular situation, and the healthcare provider also have an idea opposing to the idea of the patient. So the right action should be respect. Respect the ideas of others, respect their opinions, okay? As you would like others to respect your opinion or your ideas, okay? So that is very important when communicating, especially with people uh, coming from different backgrounds. Okay? Then number seven, listening. So in addition to what I said earlier, so do not listen to respond. Okay, rather listen to understand the message the client is sending. Okay, we don't only listen so that meron tayong mare-reply or maisasagot sa uh, pasyente. Kung hindi dapat makinig tayo para maunawaan natin kung ano yung sinasabi ng pasyente. Okay? The number eight, open-mindedness. Okay? When we say open-mindedness, hindi ito yung mga pyramiding networking na mga business. Kundi this is uh, a type of state of mind wherein both persons or a particular persons when talking with another person does not have any preconceived ideas or prejudices. Okay, and having open-mindedness is also trying to reach certain compromise when there is uh, different uh, different ideas or thoughts or opinions. Then number 9, the tone of voice. Saying a particular message in different tone of voice delivers different meaning or delivers different message. Okay. That's why we have to know, to observe, to listen. Okay? What kind of patient are we dealing with? Okay? Para alam natin kung ano ba yung mga salita, paano ba natin siya kakausapin? Okay? Para maging mabuti yung ugnayan natin sa pasyente. Okay, number 9, ask questions. So use open-ended questions and don't rush. Give the person you are talking with an opportunity to process what you have said and formulate their answer. Try not to rush responses. Okay. So open-ended questions may solicit additional information. Okay. So when we say open-ended questions, these questions are not answerable by either yes or no, but it can be answered by different forms or different words. Okay? So, ayun. Pang-sampu na pala yun. Okay? Then, we proceed to the non-verbal communication. Okay. So, non-verbal communications are actions. Okay. Are actions that can communicate messages also. So, it can be defined as a stimuli or all stimuli other than the spoken word involved in communication. It can be uh, the blinking of eyes or the yawning of the mouth, okay, or the position of the hands, etc. So these are unspoken messages, okay, that can often indicate how the patient feels more quickly than any words spoken. Okay. So most of the time, uh, nonverbal actions or communications can be seen with the patient, and observing them is very advantageous for us in providing what the patient needs. Okay. Kaya nga sabi ko kanina that as healthcare provider, we should be very observant, okay, with the actions, nonverbal actions of our patients. Okay? So, kasi nga, yung ibang pasyente, eh, they're experiencing pain and they are sick. So, maaaring hindi na sila makapagsalita ng maayos, and instead of speaking, they tend to communicate with, let's say, body language or sign language. Then, functions of nonverbal communication. So, ano ba yung, or bakit kailangan nating bigyang pansin yung nonverbal communication? Gaano ba siya kaimportante? Okay? So, importante siya dahil sa mga sumusunod na functions nito. Okay? So, it may repeat or stress the spoken word. So, meaning it can validate what the patient is, that the patient or what the patient is saying is really true. Okay? The pace of our body movement may be in agreement with what it said, okay? Or it may contradict with what is being said. So yun na, okay? Uh, Binanggit na rin natin earlier that we should be careful on how we communicate with our patient. Okay? Our actions must reflect what we are saying, and what we are saying must reflect what our actions are. So, ganon din sa pasyente. Okay. When we communicate with the patient, we should observe whether their actions are uh, implying what they are saying, or vice versa, okay, or otherwise. So, it may accent the spoken word. Okay, it it may be an emphasis on words spoken loudly or softly. Okay, so how loudly or softly the message is delivered may be significant. Okay, hindi porke malakas ang pagkakasalita, ang pagkakasabi ng isang word ay that word is important already. Okay, so baka mamaya mas importante pala yung mahina lang yung pagkakasabi ng isang particular word, diba? In order to protect what is uh, there. So, mahina lang. Okay, nonverbal actions also may regulate the spoken word. So, a receiver may nod his head or look interested in the person's spoken word, and therefore encourage further communication. Okay. So by nodding his head, that is a nonverbal communication. So it encourages us healthcare provider to communicate more with the patient, or vice versa. Okay. So now we go to the paralanguage. What do we mean by paralanguage? So paralanguage, okay, includes the rate at which one speaks, gaano kabilis magsalita, the volume of the voice, gaano kalakas ang boses, the fluency, okay? Kung paano ka bihasa magsalita, and vocal patterns. Okay, yung paiba-ibang ah, pattern ng boses. So these are paralanguage, and this can greatly affect our communication, relationship with our colleagues, our patients, and the patient's family. A paralanguage has to do with the sound of speech rather than the content. So, yeah, you should always remember that. Kaya nga siya ay parang language. Okay. Then, gender factors. Bakit may gender factors pa? Okay. So, for one, radiologic technologists must be aware that the manner of communication will vary depending upon the sex of the patient. Okay, so we should differentiate sex with gender. Okay, so when we say sex, okay, it is pertaining to the type of genitalia that we are born with. Okay, so sex. So that is male and female. Okay, when we say gender, okay, gender is how we identify ourselves. Okay. If we identify ourselves with, uh, let's say, I am a male or my sex is male, okay, and I identify myself as a male, so therefore I am a cisgender or cis male. Kung ako ay babae, pinanganak akong babae, so I am a cisgender, a cis female. Okay? However, if my sex is male but identify myself with women or as a woman, so I am a transgender. Okay? And same goes with the other genders. Okay. There are many genders na, hindi siya limited sa transgender, bisexual, homosexual, and cisgender. There are other genders. Merong gender fluid, androgynous, ano pa, uh, pansexual, yung mga ganyan. So, ayun. When dealing with patients, okay, ito importante. Kapag may na-encounter kayong mga transgenders, be it a transgender man or transgender woman, okay? So, usually transgender women, alam mo na kagad na transgender sila. Bakit? Kasi yung pangalan nila sa form ay pangalan ng lalaki. Pero nung tinawag mo, ang pumunta sa harap mo ay itsurang babae, mahaba ang buhok, maganda ang mukha, may breast, okay, nakapalda. So, obviously, you should uh, you should understand already what pronouns will you use? Okay. Kasi big deal na ngayon sa mga transgender yung pronouns na ginagamit. Okay. Ah, kahit sila ay male ang sex, but they are transgender already. So use the pronouns for female. She or her. Or use ma'am, not sir. Nakita mo ng mahabang buhok, may boobs. Tapos mukhang babae, tapos tatawagin mo pa rin sir, medyo nakakabastos, di ba? So, kahit na ano yung paniniwala natin regarding homosexuality, uh, bisexuality, or uh, sa mga trans, okay? So, we should always respect their beliefs, their preferences. Okay? And there is no harm naman when we obey or when we listen to them. Gagamit ka lang naman ng salitang ma'am sa mga transgender woman. So, it may be a small matter sa'yo, pero it is a uh, big matter for them. Okay? So, kaya nga, remember that we are practicing our professions without discrimination. Okay? So another thing in these gender factors, okay? So the female radiographer and male radiographer may tend to deliver, receive messages in an altered manner based simply on their sex. Meaning, magkaiba yung perception ng male at female radiographer on how to deliver and receive certain messages. Okay. May tinatawag na gender factors. Okay? Hindi naman sa sinasabi natin na mas mataas ang libido ng mga male compared sa mga female, or mas green-minded ang mga males compared sa females. But there are instances that indeed shows that uh, opposite sexes have different way of saying things and interpreting messages. Okay? So with whatever the sex of the patient or the radiologic technologist is, it is necessary to avoid sexual innuendos and denigration, denigration of or use of sex as means of humor. Okay? So be it with a patient or with a coworker. So it is very important for us to uh, observe this. Okay? Bakit kasi pwede tayo makasuhan ng sexual harassment? Sexual harassment in the workplace. Okay? So yung pala ang simpleng sexual innuendos, it can be a form of sexual harassment already. So we should always be mindful of what we say. Kaya nga, kailangan ay we communicate professionally with our colleagues and patients and their families. Other factors affecting communication. So prior to the beginning of any communication, so radiologic technologists must assess the following. Kailangan ma-assess na ang mga sumusunod. Dahil ito ay makakatulong sa atin kung paano tayo makikipag-communicate or interact sa ating mga pasyente. Age and sex of the patient, and gender, educational background, social and economic levels, Okay? So dito, uh, sa social and economic levels, there are some memes na kumakalat sa Facebook regarding the attitude of people who are covered by HMOs or health insurance compared with people who are paying cash. So, well, this is based also in experience that karamihan ng mga holder ng health cards or health insurance ay medyo mayabang, arugante, samantalang kung alam lang nila kung magkano ang binabayad ng health card sa doktor at sa mga services, siguro hindi sila ganun aasta. Okay? Though health insurance is a big help for for individuals, especially when uh, having medical problems. Okay, so health card holders should not forget that all of the patients are equal, be it health card holder or not, equal lang. So, hindi nila pwedeng or hindi nila dapat ipagkalandakan na MaxiCare holder ako, IntelliCare ako, or kung ano mang health card ang hawak niya. Okay. Kasi lahat naman ay paying customer. Diba? Well, in fact, ang difference nga between cash and health card patients sa consultation pa lang, example, ang consultation ng family medicine doctor is, let's say, 420. Okay, 420. That is for cash patients. Pero kapag health card, ang binabayaran lang ng health card for consultation sa mga doctors ay either 150 or 200. Depende sa health insurance company. Okay, sa MaxiCare 200 kapag siya ay uh, general practitioner and family medicine. Kapag siya at the same time internal medicine, ganun din. Uh, 200 lang. Pero kapag specialist, let's say surgeon, rehab doctor, optometry, ophthalmologist, ENT, 300. Ay yung sa mga uh, specialist doctor, kapag cash, depende sa uh, kinokonsulta ng pasyente kung magkano ang kanyang PF. Doon sa surgeon namin before, ang kanyang PF pag cash, naglalaro between 600 to 1,000 depending on what kind of case. Pero kapag siya ay card, magkano lang ibabayad ng health insurance do sa doktor? 300 pesos lang. And late pa siya ng 2 months. Diba? Tapos ang mga pasyente pa ng mga health insurance na to, kung mapag-demand, akala mo may-ari ng ospital. So, yun. So, social and economic levels. Dapat alam natin yan. And usually, ma-observe naman natin yan. And of course, kahit na ino-observe natin yan or dapat natin ma-assess yan, we should not discriminate. Okay? Then culture and ethnicity. Okay? So, yan. Kung kayo ay nakapanood na nung ah, isang medical series sa Netflix, yung New Amsterdam, okay? Meron do isang episode na ang pasyente ay for operation pero hindi siya mabigyan ng CP clearance dahil every time na i-prepare siya for operation ay nagkakaroon ng problema, tumataas ang blood pressure, so hindi matuloy yung procedure. And before pa lang mag or umpisa pa lang ng series, binabanggit na noon that the patient is coming from a particular tribe. Okay? And sinabi na nung magulang nung pasyente that uh, before the conduct of the operation, they should perform a particular ritual para sa successful operation ng pasyente. Pero yun nga, hindi naniniwala yung doctor. So, hindi pinapagawa yung procedure. And nakailang ulit na sila, nakailang attempt to conduct the operation until nag-give in yung mga doctors to perform the ritual. Then after the performance of the ritual, yan, natuloy yung operation and ayun, successful yung operation. So, uh, ang ibig ko lang sabihin, hindi naman sa kailangan nating maniwala sa mga pamahiin kung hindi kailangan natin irespeto yung kanilang culture. Okay? Then, physical ability and disabilities. Of course, observing or assessing the physical ability and disability ay makakapagbigay tayo ng proper service sa ating mga pasyente. So following this assessment, the radiological technologies must adapt its communication in a manner that can be understood by the patient. So usually when we are communicating with our patient, okay, we don't use medical terms and technical terms. Diba? We use the layman's terms, especially when instructing and explaining the procedure to our patients. Okay? So yun yung ating dapat lagi tatandaan. We should explain or communicate with our patients in layman's term, in basic words. Okay? Okay. Do you have any questions regarding communication before we proceed with informed consent? Ah, may question po ba? Okay, so informed consent. So first we must discuss what patient consent is. Okay, so patient consent can be given verbally, either verbally or written or implied. Okay, so verbally by means of words and written by signing a particular document. And implied consent is given when uh, there is nobody to give the consent and the patient is unconscious or is unable to give his consent or their consent. Okay? So basically, consent is obtaining permission. So informed consent is a process of getting permission before conducting any healthcare intervention on a person. Okay, so it is given upon a clear appreciation and understanding of the facts, implications, and consequences of an action or a procedure. Okay, and of course, informed consent is a right of every human being of adult years and sound mind. Okay, and it is one of the rights in the patient's Bill of Rights. Okay, so level of informed consent. So first is simple consent. So it is a matter of obtaining the patient's permission to obtain or to perform a procedure without the knowledge of that procedure. Okay. Simple consent is further divided into two. Okay. First is express consent. Okay? From the term express, ibig sabihin, nagbigay ng pahintulot mismo ang pasyente. It occurs when a patient, okay, does not stop the procedure from taking place. Nagbigay siya ng consent or ng pahintulot sa pamamagitan ng hindi pagpigil sa procedure na mangyari. Okay? So that is expressed consent. On the other hand, we have what we call the implied consent. So implied consent occurs in emergency situations. Okay? Na walang possible or pwedeng magbigay ng informed consent, okay? Kasi ang pasyente ay unconscious at walang relatives or any authorized person capable of giving informed consent. So this happens, okay, when the healthcare provider operates under the belief that the patient would give permission if able. So, nangyayari itong implied consent kapag yun nga, ito ay paniniwala ng mga healthcare professionals na kapag ang pasyente ay gising, ay magbibigay din siya ng go signal or na consent sa procedure. Kaya siya ay tinatawag na implied consent. So, yan. Na the patient would have give consent if the patient is conscious. Okay? Pero dahil siya ay unconscious, okay, usually ang nag-administer ng implied consent ay ang attending physician. Okay? Then levels of informed consent. Number two is, of course, inadequate consent. Okay. From the term itself, it clearly suggests to us that the consent is given without providing the patient adequate information regarding the procedure. So it is also known as ignorant consent. Okay? So yun nga, inadequate yung information about the procedure. Okay? And having inadequate consent can either lead to negligence or battery. Okay? So pwedeng kasuhan yung healthcare provider na involved or healthcare providers na involved, okay, ng either negligence kapag na-perform yung procedure nang hindi siya ah, na hindi nakakapagbigay ng informed consent ang pasyente. Or battery if there is an injury done in the patient. Kapag may nangyaring injury sa pasyente during a procedure with inadequate consent, so the patient can or may file battery to the healthcare professionals involved. Okay, so that is very important. Okay, so another thing, when we are securing uh, uninformed consent, so hindi lang natin dapat pinapapirma ang pasyente. Dapat ini-explain natin ng mabuti, isa-isa, kung ano yung nakasulat doon sa pipirmahan ng pasyente. Hindi pwedeng, eto po yung informed consent, pakibasa na lang po, and then pirmahan nyo po dito. Okay? So, hindi yun ganon. So, we have to discuss the content of the informed consent before you let the patient sign the form. Okay? Is it clear? Malinaw po ba yon? Lalo na sa mga procedure that have contrast medium or contrast media. So, pinapapirma ng informed consent ang pasyente. Okay? So, during my internship in Makati Med, so sa CT scan and MRI, kami yung inaatasan na mag-secure ng informed consent. Okay. Kaya bawat section or bawat nilalaman ng informed consent ay dinidiscuss sa pasyente. At kung may katanungan ng pasyente, yun, kailangan sagutin. Kung hindi mo masasagot dahil ikaw ay intern, so you have to call your staff. Kailangan mo tumawag ng staff na mag-explain ng or sasagot ng katanungan ng pasyente. Okay, so conditions for a valid informed consent. So, apat lang naman to. So, first, the patient must be of legal age. Second, the patient must be of sound mind. Excuse. Then, third, the patient must give consent freely, okay, without coercion. And fourth, the patient must be adequately informed of the procedure or must be in possession of all relevant facts or information. Again, the patient must be of number 1, legal age, 2, of sound mind, 3, consent is freely given and without coercion. Number 4, adequately informed of the procedure or must be in possession of all relevant information. Okay, so these are the conditions for a valid informed consent. Any one of these conditions that are not present can render the informed consent invalid. Okay? Legal age ka nga, nasa matino ka ng pag-iisip, in-explain nga sa yung procedure, pero hinaras ka, pinilit kang pumirma. Or ang sabi sa'yo, kapag hindi mo po yung pinirmahan, kapag hindi ka nag-undergo ng procedure, bukas po patay ka na. So that is coercion. Tinakot ka. Kaya ka pumirma. Okay? So, invalid ang informed consent. Okay? Then, informations that the patient should know when obtaining informed consent. Pre-treatment preparation and or instructions, then post-treatment and discharge instructions, fee information, benefits and risks and alternatives, involvements of students and trainees, role of each person or of the person performing each stage of the examination. Okay? So, yan, mga yan ang kailangan malaman ng pasyente. Okay? Pre-treatment, post-treatment, magkano ang babayaran, walang hidden charges, benefits, risks, and alternatives, involvement of students and trainees, and role of each person performing each stage of examination. Okay. So sa atin naman, ano bang role ng RadTech? So ang role lang ng RadTech is to uh, prepare the patient for the procedure, paigain sa table or sa gantry, strap ang pasyente sa CT scan, and MRI, etc. Diba? At kung may contrast, so either the doctor or the radiology nurse will initiate the uh, line, the IV line or the initial bolus. Okay? So yan. Then, related, so ito naman yung authorized substitute natin. Parents or legal guardian of a child or conservators for mentally ill. Spouse. Okay? And closest of kin. So again, kapag ang pasyente ay single, ang kanyang closest of kin ay ang kanyang parents. Kapag wala ng parents, saka pa lang ang kanyang siblings, brother or sister. Okay? Kapag wala na yung kanyang brothers and sister, ay yung kanyang mga nephew or nieces. Okay? Then, syempre, when we say legal guardian, hindi ito yung guardian lang na tinalaga ng iyong magulang. Okay? These are people authorized by a court of law to become a guardian of a particular person, be it a child or be it an old adult. Okay? So yan yung mga authorized substitute or surrogates. Okay, so these are my references. Okay, so do you have any questions? That ends our lesson for today. May question po ba?